Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. I know my own podcast. And today I have with me a beautiful soul sister, Sydney Decker, who recently reached out, and she and I were talking right before I pressed record, and we have a lot of synergy. And I'm just so grateful that you reached out and wanted to be on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Yay! Yes, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and
And it's like incredible how parallel things are.
I know. And so like before I ask questions, I should probably introduce you.
Yeah, good.
So, among other things, because there's so many things more than this, but you are an Ayurvedic health counselor, which I love, intuitive healer, author, and are your book is called Cleanse Your Energy Now, which I love.
Yes.
And what I also love is, and I don't mean this in like I love this, but I understand because I get it, like how trauma informed your healing and your remembrance of who you are. And, as we were talking a little bit about what was going on between us when our fathers died, I think that's a uncomfortable but good starting point to start telling me about your journey.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll give it a little preface just to add because I think you'll find it interesting too of how mine and my dad's energy was so intertwined. So I actually be so my dad, can I say the S word?
Yeah.
Some people get uncomfortable by it and whatever. So my dad died by suicide in 2014. Actually, like I just told you, it'll be 10 years on April 21st this year.
Mm.
So before then, though, it's very interesting because if I go back to about the age of 11, it started maybe a little bit before that. I remember at age 9, it kind of started to creep in the darkness for me. But then at age 12, it was very prominent. And so I struggled a lot with my own suicide ideation. And when I was in high school, I actually had a plan of taking my own life, and I was
Oh,
hospitalized for
wow.
2 weeks. And then the plan obviously didn't go through because I'm here, thank God. But I still didn't really get better per
Yeah.
se. Like I still struggled a lot, and I still had a lot of darkness. And I was in therapy and trauma, and there's just like so much trauma that I just couldn't process and move through. And then I had some pretty heavy experiences happen to me in college. And so I tried to take my own life again in
Oh,
college. This
wow.
time I actually not was able. See, I got to be very careful because I don't want it to sound like people like good. Like this is not good
Hmm.
stuff. But
Right.
I actually like followed through the plan, I will say.
Okay.
And I was in the hospital, and I had this whole like situation and this like dream experience where I connected with this counselor at the hospital, and he was like, let's go live through your whole life. Like, let's go understand where this really originated, where it really
Okay.
started from.
Okay.
And so I was having this experience with this counselor, but then I woke up and I was in the hospital, and my mom was next to me. And I was like, where'd the counselor go? And she was like, there's no counselor. There
Mm.
never was. And so
Okay.
then I didn't have I've been digesting that and integrating that like after I got better. It took a while for me to be like, wait, that wasn't even real, but it was like so healing, and like my life kind of changed and transitioned after that. And then so that was probably like 2012. And then my dad ended up taking his own life in 2014. The crazy part about him taking his own life is probably like 2 to 3 months, maybe 6 months max, I had no more suicide ideation. So I didn't crave it
Interesting.
in the same way that I
Hmm.
had been craving it before. So don't get me wrong, I've like struggled with like thoughts, and every once in a while my brain will go to that extreme place.
Hmm.
But before I used to actually like give into it and
Oh,
like
wow.
it would take over me. Now I can recognize that like this is just a intrusive thought,
Hmm.
and it doesn't consume me when before it used to consume me for like months on an end. So I
Okay.
wanted to kind of give that explanation to kind of
Yeah.
explain like what my purpose is and how I found my purpose, because I feel like my dad and my soul's destiny were intertwined from the beginning.
Mhm.
And so like it was almost like a part of both of our lives that we kind of like agreed to before we came in these bodies and
Mhm.
forgot what we agreed to.
Right, right.
So now looking back on it, because as the 10 year is approaching, I actually just posted about him today. I'm just like reflecting and seeing how much we were connected and how much I took on for him and how
Mhm.
much this is a part of my destiny. And if I didn't have this experience of losing my dad this traumatic way, I never would have understood and gone to the depths of my shadow and sat with
Mhm.
my inner child and
Mhm.
realized that this is what the universe is calling us to do, because there's so much shadow on this planet. There's so much trauma on this planet that
Mhm.
we need people who are willing to understand what it means to transmute it, and we need people who are willing to sit in the dark and not be afraid. And so I had to have like some of the darkest moments in my life to prepare me to sit in the dark with myself so I could invite people into their own darkness, just to show them that it's just a place, and that the monsters, when you turn the light on, are just a sock or your cat or like running out of the closet. Like it's not anything that we think it is.
Right.
It's just us having to become more conscious of who we truly are, and that we do have the power to do that. But I needed to be brought to that place by experience. And some
Mm.
things you can't truly go to, or you don't know the path unless you experience it.
Yeah.
So it was like, and it sounds so weird, and I totally get this when I say this, but it's almost like my dad gave me that gift of darkness. So that way I didn't just have to save him. I could save all of him, which means other people on the planet that reflect what he's also going through.
Mhm.
And so it's like I could have got caught up my whole life trying to save him. And then I never would have seen myself. I never would
Right.
have dealt with my own darkness. I never would have gone in and realized that I am intuitive and I have these healing abilities and that I'm actually a bright light that is sent here to first and foremost understand that about myself, but to also help other people to understand this alchemization process of what it means to be human, and how there's always darkness and there's always light, and
Yeah.
how we can work with it and it doesn't have to be this overwhelming, scary thing.
Mm.
And I just got there, so I'm excited.
I love that so much because like there's so many things at the same time popping up. So like I knew when I was 10 that I came in here to heal all of the ancestral shit
Mm-hmm.
and that I was not going to have children because I didn't want to bring it forward.
Ah,
And so that's how deep my soul commitment was for like clearing all of the ancestral stuff. And seeing the different layers of what I have healed for the ancestral line, it's just ripple effects out from there. Like
mm-hmm.
I've I've had many opportunities to heal traits of narcissism in relationships with my
Yeah,
partners. Like my partners mastered gaslighting. Oh, so
yeah,
beautiful. Like, but I didn't know that. Like I didn't know how to stand in my power while in relationship with people who didn't know how to stand in theirs.
yeah. That's actually a good way to put it. Yeah.
And also learned a lot about codependency and a lot about people pleasing. Because as women, it's like the natural desire to help, right? We have that innate ability to like turn into like, I love cooking for people, love it. Do I love doing it when I'm depleted? Mm, I don't. I used to do it when I was depleted, and then it took me like 3 days to recover from it. So the difference is like I've honed in that innate desire to love others because that's one of my love languages is food within the context of like still loving myself in the process.
Yeah.
And that's such a like all the different layers of what we get to bring, like what we signed up for. And how we get to be present to those things to integrate them into wholeness within ourselves. I don't know. I don't know if everyone is signed up for that, but the ones I speak to all know that that's part of our mission.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually like a really big word that's been coming up for me is integrate. And what does that truly mean?
Mhm.
Because I mean, I've had experiences where I mean, my whole journey of waking up, it's like you wake up and you just want to consume all this knowledge. You just start learning and you're just learning and learning and learning. And I started to be like, and then you start to get brought to like different groups and you start to like wherever you're at, you'll kind of attract a group that kind of resembles that. And so I was getting all this knowledge and I would meet all these like spiritual people that had all this knowledge, but they were still acting out like not spiritual things. And I'm not saying
Mhm.
that there's like a bad or a judgment
Right.
or there's a right way of being, but it's like I could talk with this one woman for like hours on end and she would be like, do these things, do this, and I would do those things and it'd be great, but she was still playing a victim in her life over and over and over. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right.
So then that's when I started to catch like, okay, so you can learn something and then it just stays in your mental body.
Right.
But then it's got to, in order for it to really drop down in, I started having these experiences where all of a sudden I'd be like, I would have read something 25 million times over. I'd be like, I know, I've read this. But all of a sudden, one day I'd have an experience and it would drop down into my heart and I would truly understand the knowledge that I read. And then it would become wisdom. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I can live this. I don't just
Mhm.
read this. It doesn't just swim up here. It's something
Right.
that like is a wisdom and now I've experienced that wisdom and I like how that feels and I want to create and co-create more of this wisdom. So then
Yeah.
that's where I kind of got with the knowledge and the wisdom.
Mhm.
Then I still saw that like I mean we're human beings, so don't get me wrong.
Right. Right.
We're
Right.
still going to have our stuff.
Yeah.
But I started to be like, okay, so even though there's these times with this wisdom, I still have like this subconscious programming that like still wants to like be in charge. So
Mhm.
what do I need to do to really help my healing? And that's when I started to hear the word integrate, 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 integrate. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And then basically I started to get this image or this description because I'm like a channeler. So like I get a lot of like images and feelings and like my guides and my higher self will explain things to me in more of like a natural way of like showing me. So it's like
Mhm.
I was seeing these two cups of water and like one of them is cold water and you're pouring in the knowledge and the cold water is mixing with cold water, knowledge is mixing with knowledge. And then there's hot water and hot water is like your wisdom. And so hot water is pouring in hot water and then the hot water stays hot. Like, so there's two cups and they're water.
Mhm.
But to integrate it means to allow them to flow together and to create like a lukewarmness. But that's like
Mm.
what integration is. It's not one extreme or the other. It's bridging and it's like creating this flow of like consciousness and life. And so when you integrate it, you allow it to become part of you. So like there's so many times that I've noticed even working with clients, they'll learn something and they just want to keep giving me the knowledge of it.
Mhm.
But then I say you have to live it. And so
Right.
that's what that integration allows. It's like you're not just knowledge, you're not just wisdom. This integration is allowing all of it to be there. So you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom, and now you're actually living in alignment with it. And that's what I've started to see as what integration means to me,
Mhm.
anyways. And it's been something so like life changing when you do start to integrate. Like,
Mhm.
and I'll kind of explain it this way too, because me and my friend, we talk on the phone a lot and we'll talk about like relationship issues, this or that. And we were talking about how there's times that we notice, like, I don't currently have like an active partner right now, but she does. And so
Okay.
but I've had partners before. And so we were like talking about how her and her partner have had the same conversation over and over and over. And he keeps saying, I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. And it's like you hear this whole conversation out in the world where it's like communicate, communicate, hear each other, hear each other.
Mhm.
But I started to say to her, it's like, how many times have people or has he said to you, I hear you, but he's not integrating the hearing?
Right. Right.
He's hearing you. Like he's hearing you say that over and over and over. I don't take that away from him. I think he is hearing you.
Right.
But what he's not doing is taking that and integrating it and allowing that conversation to change something about how he's showing up.
Mhm.
All he's doing is just staying in the knowledge of it. He's
Right.
not even bringing it into the wisdom. Maybe he does a little bit because he can empathize a little bit more. That's what wisdom
Right.
helps us.
Right.
But to truly integrate it would be he's allowing that conversation to change him in some
Mhm.
way for, I mean, you can do it with bad things or whatever, but I would say in a positive way to
Right.
integrate that so they both can show up together and integrate with each other. So it's so funny that you're saying integrate because it's been in like almost every single one of my conversations lately.
I
And I've been
love
trying
that.
to understand what it means.
Well, for me, it's like, okay, so I have a practice, and my practice is one of many practices, but this one's coming up. Triggers.
Hmm.
So I've done a lot of somatic healing. So when I feel a trigger, um, right now I just like feel it and it's gone. When I started feeling triggers, I'd be like, this hurts, this really hurts, but this is like, and then I'd like feel into where it hurt in me.
Hmm.
And there's one particular person who triggered me more than others. And I thank him
Hmm.
because he didn't know that I had the trigger. I didn't know that I'd repressed it for so long. I didn't know I had it. And then all of a sudden my body's like feeling because I'm doing somatic healing. So I'm now present to the body and I'm like, oh, I can actually feel it. This is amazing. I can actually feel my feelings. Oh my God, I'm going to cry because this is like so exciting. At the same time, this is like, wow, this hurts, but it's all good. And like, you can't hurt me because like you didn't know this was me.
Right.
So now when somebody points out a piece of my subconscious that I can't see, I'm like, oh, let me feel into it. And it's not like the massive crying anymore because I don't need to because my body already knows it's safe. It's more like
Hmm.
a, oh, didn't know that. Okay, thanks. Let me see if there's anything in me that needs to like communicate with me. No, I'm good. And so the practice has been integrated to the point where it's just second nature. And if something like in the middle of the night, I used to have anxiety attacks, like
Hmm.
massive at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Best time to have
Hmm.
them.
Yeah, worst.
I know. And so, so
I've had one in the middle,
yeah,
yeah, like, where it wakes
it's,
you up and you're, yeah.
oh yeah. So what my body knows though is that I just shut my brain down and I listen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I put my hands on whatever is discomforting and I just breathe and I breathe and I breathe and I breathe and I breathe until I feel the energy move. And then if it goes somewhere else, I tune into that part of my body and I just do the same damn thing. And I can be up for 3 hours
Hmm.
just being present with myself because that's what my body wants.
Yep.
So I've trained the neural pathways to the point where my body knows if it wants to communicate something to me, I'm there. I'm not going in my brain. Like my former academic used to torture me with like, where is it? What is it? I want to know what's the root cause. Dig, 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 dig. I can't do that anymore because my body's like, nope, we're just going somatic right now, and I'm just going to feel into it. And that's just a habit now. And I love that. And
Yeah.
that's the integration. It's like when it becomes a habit and it's not something you
Yes.
consciously make a choice to like, oh, right, I got to remember to do this. That's the integration is when you know the practice has become in it. It's like part of you.
Yeah, I was just going
That's
to
the
say a part
integration.
of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you allow it to make that you allow it to become in. You integrate. I
Mhm.
mean, I guess there's no other word.
Right.
You
Right.
integrate it. You
Right.
allow it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's like really again, we have parallels and stuff. But that's a big piece of what I help my clients to do too is like the integration. And when your dad died, I know you're interviewing me, but I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
like, for me, it made me relive everything. Like, it made me look at my entire life.
Hmm.
And nothing in my life has ever made me look at that way. Like, I mean, it almost like, even though I didn't die, it was almost like my life with him flashed before my
Hmm.
eyes.
Hmm.
And I wanted to know, because that's really what woke me up to where I needed to heal. Because before he died, I had this pain because me and my dad, we did have some issues because he was an alcoholic. So he
Mhm.
struggled and he moved away at one point. He wasn't always at home and these types of things. And so, of course, when I'm alive and he's alive and I'm with my friends and I'm going to talk about him and be like, my dad's, and like when he passed away, I saw that differently. I
Mm.
saw how I talked about him differently
Mhm.
because, well, now he's gone. You know what I mean? But
Right.
before I
Right.
had permission to kind of talk about him because he was here. And so, and I didn't necessarily, I mean, a little bit of me felt guilt about it, but at the same time, what I saw differently was why I was upset. Before I just was like talking with my friends. Now I
Mhm.
was like,
Mhm.
I really loved him and I wanted him
Yeah.
around. And I was just
Yep.
trying to act big and tough. You know what I mean? In front of my
Right.
friends, like I didn't need my dad when
Right.
I was still. So that's what I mean. Like, did you have that experience or is that just me or I don't
Well,
know?
I had so when my dad died, so I had an amazing dad when I was little. Like he was just fun, he was silly, he was playful. His dad died, and his dad was my best friend. So when my grandpa died, I lost my grandpa, and then I lost my dad too because he had a lot of trauma that he never processed with his dad. He
Uh-huh.
emotionally
Yeah.
withdrew. My 10-year-old came up with a whole bunch of like crazy ass logic that helped me connect with him by watching basketball and a couple other things that like I don't like because I just wanted to be with my dad.
Yep.
So as I continued my life, like what his connection with me was reading the book jackets of the book he read. So
Mm,
like he was trying to, and he didn't know how to connect with me because he was emotionally repressed. So for me, like the day he died, he's in hospice and they're like, he's got a staph infection. I'm like, fuck that. I'm sorry. I'm touching this man. He needs somebody who's gonna love him. And
yes.
so I caress him and like I was so gentle because I just wanted him to feel how loved he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then his sister called, who he hated, yelled at me because I was selfish, because I wasn't talking to anyone in the family, because I was focused on dad and mom. And I'm the only child. So I was like, nope, this is my life right now, watching my dad die, making sure my mom doesn't go crazy. These are
Yeah.
my jobs. So like I'm just there and she yells at me. And then she wants to talk to my dad. I think my dad just left because he talked to her or he
Oh
listened
my
to her because
God.
he couldn't talk. He couldn't talk. So he was like completely paralyzed except for his eyes. And so what happened after he transitioned was like that moment where I felt his soul leave his body and scatter across the universe. I was in shock because everything I thought I knew, and I'd had other family members, like I'd seen every family member transition, but him, it was like, I can't pretend anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's more to this existence than this third dimensional construct that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it shook me to my core. And then the life lessons he gave me, because he was obese and he was a hoarder. So he's looking for
Mm-hmm.
love outside of himself. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
sent me on the like self-forgiveness track that I listened to a meditation every day for 7 years for self-forgiveness ultimately, because I
That's
knew I had
beautiful.
so much to do. And then it was like, what am I putting aside in my life to please other people, to make other people happy? How am I not living my fullest potential? Because he didn't. He did in some ways. And like at his memorial service, I was stunned by the people that came up to me and said, "Your father saved my life."
Mm,
He was a math teacher and he got all the kids that were like failing out of school and he saved them.
mm, I love that.
And so I got to see that level of compassion with him and his patience and his presence that he couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the regret I had was not being able to have that person in my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
that person that everybody was talking to me about. I was like, I, I wanted that person. Like I saw
Right.
it in him and I knew he was a gentle, compassionate human being who repressed a lot of his feelings because he didn't know how to express them. So like that was a big mission for me, is like express your feelings.
Yep.
Feel your feelings. That's huge. And then like don't put your life aside for other people because you're just going to get obese and be a hoarder.
Right.
And
Right.
so it was like, and that's all about not loving yourself.
Hmm.
And, that may trigger somebody, and I'm sorry if it does, but that's your trigger and it's not mine.
Right.
Um, and, but like for me, it was like, oh shit, like I have that opportunity to like shift me and follow my dreams. And like a year later, I quit my job and I started taking voiceover classes because that was another passion of mine, was to do voiceovers because I didn't want to not experience it. It's like he never came out west. I live in Oregon, and he never came out west. And I was like, Dad, wish you came out. You would have loved to. So you could have been a park ranger. You could have done all these amazing things. And one day I was driving in Washington State and rode in between Redmond and Seattle, and you can see the Cascade Mountains on one side and the Olympic Peninsula on another.
Okay,
Gorgeous
cool.
blue sky day. It was fabulous. And I'm on the bridge and I'm doing 60 miles an hour. I'm like, gosh, Dad, I really wish you could have seen this. I really wanted you to come out. He comes
Yeah.
in and he's like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And then he flew off. And I'm like, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like that's 30 seconds. You can't just like come in like that and leave. But like, you know, the fact that he sees like his biggest influence on me was the reverence I have for nature.
Okay, yeah.
I absolutely love being outside. I get giddy when I see like a hummingbird or a tree talking to me or whatever it is. That presence of being in awe of what is when I'm outside is his biggest gift.
Isn't that interesting of like how you really see the gifts that they leave that have
Mhm.
nothing to do with the 3D reality? Because like I've started to see that too of like there's so many. I got my dad's humor. So when I was growing up, I loved his sense of humor. Like I integrated it. This is where I started to learn. Like I just loved how he would look at me and say something with this like sarcastic tone. Like to me, it was funny because I got him. I got
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
And so like I literally got it, right? Like I got his
Yeah.
sense of humor. So now when I'll do something or say something and I'll get that look, I'm like, that's my dad. Like I am my dad. And it's
Mhm,
before it used to like kind of freak me out. And then now I'm
mhm.
like, this is how I'm keeping him alive. This is how
Yeah,
I'm like, this is where the DNA is that strong. And like I learned
yeah.
this. And it's also so interesting too, because as you were talking, you helped me to see something that I saw, but I couldn't put into words because my dad's mother also died when he was 28. And so
Oh, wow.
my parents had me very young. So I was 4 or 5 at the time. So I was alive when his mom died.
Mhm.
And he was a very similar dad, like that you described, like joking, loving, kind, tucking me in at night, reading me books, all these things. And then that happened and I could feel a shift and a change, but at the time I was 5, so I didn't
Right,
really,
right.
really notice.
Yeah.
But I started to really notice at after I turned 7. And so
Mhm.
at age 7, I don't know if you've probably learned about this, but I don't know if other people have heard about this, but the most important years of your life are actually in utero to age
Mhm,
7. That's when you develop your consciousness, basically.
mhm.
That's when you start to, anything that's going on around you, you're a sponge and you're just taking
Right.
it in. What's seen, what's unseen, what's said, what's not said, what's
Mhm,
felt and not being told is felt. We
mhm.
are we are gigantic sponges. Like there's so much we don't understand about the beauty and the magic of what a human being is. We see this
Mhm.
physical body and we're like, we stop there. And I don't know why. Like, it kind of like
Yeah.
is like alarming why we do.
Right,
I'm
right.
almost like, I think that we're told to or something. I don't know. That's where it
Probably.
gets like conspiracy on you,
Yeah,
but I'm not
yeah.
going to.
Oh, honey, I'm like I've been so down so many rabbit holes, it's not even funny, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I have. So, when you said that you noticed his dad died, he changed, your dad
Oh,
changed.
significantly.
And now looking back on it, I felt it and I knew that's where it originated because I later on I started to ask questions about it because back when no one we didn't talk about it. Like you didn't
Mhm,
talk about
mhm,
it.
mhm.
And then now that my dad passed away, actually my mom has shared a little bit more about that time, and I've gotten
Okay.
older, so I could handle a little bit more of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
information. But she even said that he had so much guilt because he was supposed to go and see her, but he couldn't make it because he drank and then she died. And
Oh,
so
geez. Yeah.
he like that consumed him. And so
Mm-hmm.
then what are you going to do? Like if you have something that kind of like, can I swear too?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just did.
Okay. So when you have something that fucks you up and it fucks up something else,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to continue to do that fucked up thing as a
Right.
punishment to yourself. Do you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean by that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I
And he
feel
did. I
like,
mean, that's why he got fat.
right. So
Like
and
your
that's
dad
what my
became an
dad,
alcoholic, my dad became fat.
right. And my dad, he couldn't stop because that's what stopped him from seeing his mom. So that's what's going to stop him. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was so interesting when you said that. It just like opened this avenue in my brain to
Yeah,
see that that's what he did. He withdrew more. I didn't get the fun as
right.
fun of a dad. I didn't get the as like he used to be very present and you would know when he was home. It's like
Mm-hmm.
then it became he sat in front of the couch with a cracked open a beer. That was not the original. That was not what
Right.
my memories were.
Right.
So it was just like very profound. And then I also think at 7 is when you get your own auric field. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're no longer umbrellaed under your mother's auric field, whether she's in your life or not. So some
Mm-hmm.
people it could be a good thing, and other people it could not be a good thing. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I became so, as soon as I got my own aura, I was like self-aware. Like I was just like always looking out to see what was going on. I could feel everything because I'm a projector in human design. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like
I'm a manifestor generator, so yeah.
okay, cool, you do.
Yeah.
So projectors are the sponges. So we even sponge up
Mm.
more because we plug right into people's soul centers. So
Oh,
we can
wow.
help see and feel. So I can literally like plug into clients and then I become them and I can see what they see and feel what they
Wow.
feel. So at 7, I'm doing this with my dad. You know what I mean? But I didn't know it
Wow. Right.
because how would you know
Right.
this?
Right.
So this is when I started to realize how intertwined we were. Is at 7, I started to really notice his drinking and I started to say, like, my dad needs help at 7. And then at
Yeah.
9, I was like, I told the universe to give me some of his darkness because I could feel it. And then 12, it really set in. So then I didn't even realize because he had moved across the state. It didn't matter.
Oh,
Me and him
wow.
were simultaneously dealing with suicide ideation and thoughts
Mm.
and all these things and this darkness. And I was just so plugged into him that it was like influencing me and my
Yeah.
darkness and my choices. And it was just like this whole like I mean, it's been like 10 years of like having these awarenesses around how all that works and how
Mm-hmm.
interconnected we truly are. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something so profound about that parent child relationship that is so sacred, yet is not talked about enough in this
Oh,
world.
yeah. And I mean, I'm an only child and I was the firstborn grandchild.
Okay,
I lived
wow.
2 houses away from my grandparents from four till, well, till my parents sold the house or my mom sold the house in 2013. So like I was the primary grandchild because of access. And I was the only one who had access to my grandpa because he died when I was 10 and my oldest cousin is 6 years younger than me.
Oh,
So
wow.
she didn't really get the connection that I did. So I had, when my grandpa died, he sat on my bed for 3 days
Mm.
telling me he was okay. And I was freaked out because I didn't know. Like, I
Right.
don't know. Like, I just saw him and nobody, like, the whole thing was really fucked up because, like, they wouldn't let me sit with my family during the funeral. I got to sit in the balcony and then I saw the open casket, like, with people I didn't really know. I was like, so much trauma with this that I have healed, but like, I was like, you what? You did all right. Okay, 1970s. They didn't really understand how kids think, or 1980, I
Well,
guess.
that's true. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
about to say.
So like I'm astral traveling when I'm like 7. I remember tying myself to the bed so I could astral travel. So I'm already super connected, but I'm so freaked out. And there's two family members that got institutionalized, and my grandfather and a grandmother. Um, that I'm like, I can't really share this because I don't want to be placed in an institution because I know I'm not crazy, but I have absolutely no one to relate with.
Right.
And on top of that, the second male of my life who I was born with a dislocated hip, so I'm in traction for 6 weeks and then in a body cast for a year and a half. He was the one that carried me.
Oh, wow.
Super intense bond with him.
Yes.
He's the love of my life, right? I'm a little girl whose father carries her everywhere. And so like to go from grandpa teaching me how to fish, how to how to pick raspberries, how to plant, how to like ice skate and how to row boats, and then dad reinforcing that, having all of that amazingness to literally nothing
Mm-hmm.
the summer he died. And like everything was just cut off. It was like, what just happened? Like I couldn't process it. Plus, I have all this spiritual stuff going. I'm like, I have to just shut stuff off
Yep.
because there's so much trauma in the house right now. And mom's doing her manic depression like control thing to try to bring things into control. And like I see it all. And I have so much compassion for everyone. But like that, what happened was that little girl who had that really tight connection with dad longed for it because there was
Yep.
so much disorientation in the family. And so like I kept looking to reconnect that and he didn't have the capacity for it.
Yep.
So I'd see glimmers of it and like I'd go apple picking with him and that would be like a bonding moment, which I still love
Yes.
apple picking. Any kind of berry picking, any kind of picking I absolutely love. But like every time I do it, I remember him and the joy
Yeah.
we had. And if I go out on a lake and I see like an otter or an osprey or anything, and I'm like, oh, it's that. But like, it was that weird, like the bond for me was like trying to pull him back into himself because he was so traumatized that he couldn't, he was there, but he wasn't.
Yes.
And so it was like me trying to like, come on, dad, come back, come back, come back. And that was where I was at in the journey because I didn't know how to I wanted to fix him. Of course, we know we can't fix anyone, but I didn't know that at the time and I just missed him.
Yep. That is literally like my experience that I started to realize too. And I also started to see how the darkness takes hold. Like how, so like I'm gonna start talking about my book, I guess, because this is where it's like
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of leading
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But it's just like I actually want to talk about energy first. So,
Yeah.
because this is what I started to realize about myself. So after my dad died, I started to have the same things. And I started to realize like I was just trying to get him to come back. Like I was so caught up in everything he was doing. Like, I mean, when I was a little kid, had similar experiences that you explained. So like when my grandma died, I saw her too. She came and saw me. And so I told
Mm.
everyone about it. Luckily, my family was like slightly okay with it. So like they didn't think I was insane. Plus, I was 5.
Okay, good. Okay.
And yeah, but I told them because I had no idea that she had died. No one had told me that she died. I
Oh,
literally
wow.
thought she
Okay.
was in my room, but she was dead.
Wow.
So it was
Okay.
like, so my aunt was sitting at the kitchen table. I guess it was the day after that my grandma died. So they hadn't told me
Mhm.
and my brother yet.
Okay.
And I was sitting at the kitchen table eating my breakfast. I was having cereal. This is the story that I was
Mhm.
told. I don't remember this.
Right,
And I
right,
was eating
right.
cereal, and my dad's sister was in the kitchen with my mom because she came over to be with my dad and my mom too. But
Yeah.
um, and they were talking about it and everything, and my aunt was crying, but I mean, I was fine. I didn't really. And
Right.
my aunt was crying about how I just wish I knew she was okay. I just wish I knew she passed
Mm.
peacefully. I just wish because my grandma died. We lived in Pennsylvania and she passed away in Alabama, so no one got to her in
Okay.
time. And that like
Okay.
she lived there, like that's where she
Yeah.
lived, but
Yeah.
no one knew. Like they said that it was coming, but they didn't make it was just this thing. And
Right.
so I was eating cereal and I put my spoon down and I looked up at my aunt and I go, Grandma, she's fine. She came in my bedroom last night and she picked me up and she kissed me and she hugged me and she told me that she wasn't going to be seeing me for a while, but she loved me and to let everyone know that she was okay. And then I just picked my spoon up and I started eating cereal because I
I
didn't
love
know,
that. Right.
she's not like I told them she died. Like she
Right,
didn't
right,
tell me that
right.
she died. She just said you're not going to be seeing me for a while.
Right, right.
So then my aunt, I guess, I mean, my aunt still tells the story to this day, like just looked over at my mom and was just literally like, think like it helped her, but it
Oh,
was kind of
cool.
so like shocking at what as
Right,
well.
right.
So it's kind of like it's a very interesting thing, and like I saw that stuff too. Like I could
Yeah.
do certain things, and I didn't even know. I thought it was normal, and then people were like, "Wait, you're seeing those things?" So basically, what it started to show me is when my dad passed away, and I had this like whole experience of like reliving or seeing my entire life with him. I
Hmm.
also kind of saw like aspects of his life because I started to like talk to his friends and want to get to know who he was
Hmm.
before
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
And he had lost a brother early on in his life. So when my dad was 13, his brother got in a car accident and died at 21.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And then his mom died. So it was like this, a lot of this stuff. But his friends told me that his darkness really set in at 13, which is mine also set in at 13.
That's fascinating.
Right? I just started to like realize like how kind of like you're talking about with ancestral work, like the
Hmm.
DNA when it wants to heal, it's going to do the same things over and over and over until someone is aware enough to do something about it. And
Oh,
like you
yeah.
said, growing up at that time, like my dad, he was also a projector, come to find out. But he was also similar to your dad, just this loving, I could feel it, just this very sensitive, creative, amazing, funny,
Hmm.
kind, like his intelligence was off the charts. Like,
Mm.
and I think that's part of probably his downfall. And that's probably
Right.
where, I mean, he did kill himself, like by shooting himself. So it's like that was also his biggest problem is his
Right.
brain. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, so it's just like so interesting to start to, this is what I'm trying to get to start to say how darkness and how it starts to take shape and how it gets passed down and
Hmm.
how it gets stored in us and then it
Yeah.
changes our DNA and then it
Hmm.
changes the trajectory of like our ancestry, you know what I mean? Like how things happen.
Yeah.
So I think I was supposed to wake up to that fact
Hmm.
so that way I could start to see and clear it and make it like an actual understanding for people. It's not just this esoteric thing, but how, because you've been doing somatic work and I've been brought to somatic work, the body keeps the score.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how do I let this go? Because the triggers that we were just talking about like a few minutes ago, I get them too. Everyone does.
Hmm.
But how do I disengage them? How do I like soften them? How do
Hmm.
I start to take up space in my own body? Because those triggers are just where the pain was stored. Those
Right.
triggers are where we took
Right.
that on. And I started to realize that of like, this is not me. I'm actually hovering above my body most of the time. And
Hmm.
what I'm using my body as is a little knapsack to store all my pain inside. So I need to take
That's
a
a great
moment.
description.
Yeah, I need to take a moment to clean out my bag because I'm trying to
Hmm.
stuff more stuff into it and it's screaming and I don't have room
Right.
and things are falling out and I feel a mess and I don't feel good and what is this? And
Hmm.
so my dad's passing and all these awarenesses and all these things, and that's also another story I could get into, but we've been talking for a while. It's like my dad tried to come to see me after he died.
Oh,
And I wasn't, he actually tried, I guess I'll talk about it.
yeah.
He actually tried to appear. Like he actually tried, like I was conscious. It wasn't in a dream. It wasn't any of
Hmm.
these things. And so it was the day that he died. So like he died in the morning. It was that night. So the night going into the next morning.
Hmm.
And I was staying at my brother's house. And all of a sudden, my brother, it was probably about 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. I was having a hard time sleeping. He was too, but my brother was like, all right, it's like 2:30. I'm going to try to go upstairs and lay down. Like, if you need me, just let me know. Come and get me. And so I was down in his living room by myself because he had a roommate and there was no other room. And all of a sudden I'm laying there by myself and I just start to hear this motorcycle. And at first it started like it was in the distance. And I'm like,
Okay.
okay, that's interesting. And then it got louder, and then it got
Okay.
louder, and then it got louder, and then it got louder. And then it was as if this motorcycle was in the room, in the living room, so loud, like I don't even know. And then I started to like kind of got stuck in like almost like a paralysis. It was like this
Okay.
energy came over me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like my hair stood up like everywhere, like my arm, like
Mhm.
straight up, like chills just moved through me as I'm hearing this
Mm.
like motorcycle noise and all these
Mhm.
things. And I'm not even joking. I started to see this like kind of looked like a fog, like this white essency, and it started to like appearate, like as if something was going to be there. And
Yeah.
I could start to see it on the ground. And I mean, I captured it and it started like it was going to be something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just screamed, "Stop. I'm not ready. I can't see you
Yeah.
like that." And everything immediately, the motorcycle stopped, everything stopped. And it went away. The appearation went away. And I had to lay there for a minute with my chest. Like if I was a cartoon, it would have been
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
out of my chest. I had to lay there and then I ran upstairs to tell my brother. Um, I didn't tell him all of the things until like the next day or whatever. I just was like,
Mhm.
I'm scared. I need you. And then it was okay. And then my dad came to visit me later on in a dream. But it was like the funny thing about it is he used to ride motorcycles. He would take me on rides on motorcycles.
Mm.
So it was like this whole thing. And then you start to learn about when people pass away, like some people sound like a tree. It's actually an energy. And
Mm.
so you get some time to walk around after you die for like at least in the yogic tradition, you have about like 14 days until you have to well, you don't have to. Some people do walk around and stay stuck as ghosts. They get trapped
Yeah.
in different things.
Yeah.
So that was just like an interesting thing that
Yeah.
happened to show, but it just was, I mean, it opened me. It opened my
Mhm.
third eye. Like it opened me. I just was completely shattered to my truth
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
And so I started to get to the point what I was making with this energy thing. I started to see and realize how much my dad was carrying of his trauma.
Mm.
And I started to see how I was also carrying it because no one tells us like we're told brush our teeth, take a shower, but no one
Right.
says like, oh, did that person who said those hurtful things, did that get lodged in your heart? Or is your
Mhm.
anxiety in your stomach? Is there too much in there? Like, are you too fearful? And no, you know
Right.
what I mean? Like, our
Right.
organs store emotions.
So much.
Our meridians store emotions. Our lymphatic system is actually needs to be moved because it's our water and it's our emotion. And
Mhm.
like there's so much that we don't understand because we're not told and we're not taught. So I had to do
Right.
a lot of this myself. And so I started doing Kundalini yoga, which I gotta say Kundalini yoga particularly because there's a lot of breath work and there's a lot of like mudra. So it's similar to somatic, like you're in
Mhm.
mudras for a while, you're doing a lot
Mhm.
of breath work.
Mhm.
And that's what helps to change the neural net pathways. And we would do these release classes.
Ooh.
And it would be like, I mean, we'd be there for like 3 hours, but we would do
Ooh.
these types of breath work. And then I would just sob and my body would shake and like convulse. And like, if
Mhm.
you're watching this from the outside, you're like, these people are nuts. But then the next day, I would have like creative ideas and this and that, and I would feel good and I would know, and I'd be like, something left me. I could actually
Mhm.
tell that something had left my body and I was
Mhm.
taking up more space.
Yeah.
So I started to do that for like I did Kundalini yoga for like 6 years and I was doing these healings and doing and getting Reiki and doing this stuff. And then my yoga teacher introduced me to cleansing baths and like
Okay.
soaking in these tubs with intention
Mm.
though, not
Mhm.
just soaking like my muscles are sore, like with
Right.
the intention of letting go the sadness,
Mhm.
bringing in your inner child, sitting like just being naked
Mhm.
and vulnerable with yourself and
Right.
letting that water touch you and cleanse you and like notice
Mm.
kind of like the somatics and noticing. And so I would do these baths and then I would feel even like I would feel like squeaky clean, like internally, like because what I
Mhm.
brought the intention. And then I started to work with the moon. And so I started to do a lot of writing and a lot of journaling and a lot of like talking and like releasing on full moons, I would write letters. So I wrote a letter to my dad about all the anger I had him. I wrote a letter to my
Mm.
brother. I wrote a letter to people who violated me. I wrote letters to like that one kid who put glue on my seat in like preschool. Like I just started to give things a voice. And then I started to sit with ages of myself of when I would
Mhm.
remember like I mean my 13-year-old self was like there's so much that she wanted to say, but she just couldn't. So I was like,
Yeah.
what do you want to say? And then I talked
Yeah.
back to her, and then she would talk back to me, and I'd be like, I am not just what people tell me I am, where I wake up, go to work, come home. Like, I am like, I'm all ages of myself all at the once. I'm also my mother and my father. I'm also my grandparents. I'm also the earth. I'm also like, I'm these
Right.
things. And I started to realize, what's a word that I could use to describe this? Energy. We are just
Mhm.
energy.
Right.
And so it's this beautiful connection to
Mhm.
my true authentic energy. And it's kind of started to, my guides, I started to connect with my guides, and they started to show me, like, just like you clean a house, you got to clean your inner house. So that's
Mhm.
when I started to do inner cleansing, doing all these things. Obviously, I started to work with like burning sage. You got to be very mindful of how you work with sage. Like, people can't just burn, like, you got to be mindful. Sage is good for clearing, like on a new moon, full moon. Palo Santo, you can burn a lot of the time because it immediately transmutes negativity into positivity. There's just
Mhm.
like certain things you got to have some knowledge about. You don't have to be
Right.
afraid, but just know if you're going to burn sage and you don't tell it what you want to take away, it's going to take away everything that's
Mm.
not serving you. Like, that's
Right.
sage is like an eraser that, like, if you let it go wild, it will erase. Like, it just won't stop.
Mhm.
So, those things. So the one day last year, I got to this place where I was like, okay, how can I reach more people about this information? Because this is life changing and
Mhm.
it's changed my life. And if I could give anything, if I could leave a legacy of just like what people need to do that's so simple, what is it? And so I was sitting on the couch. It was like probably 8 o'clock at night. I got this tab because every once in a while I'll get a tap on my inner shoulder, I call it. And it was like, you're gonna write a book. We're gonna write it right now. And I'm like, okay. And anytime that this happens, I listen to it. So I'm
Mhm.
like, we're gonna write a book about what? Because I was just watching, like, I don't, okay, whatever, cool. So I go and I like sometimes, like, you know how you're just like
Right.
unconscious.
Right.
So I grab my computer, I open it, and I hear you're gonna write a book, and it's called Cleanse Your Energy. And I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, this information, it's just like a download, just came
Mhm.
through.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a very simple, practical thing. And I just started to see, as I was writing it, the core, like all the ways in which I've cleansed myself, like all the
Mm.
ways, like there's 7 ways, and they're just very simple, straightforward ways. And
Mhm.
I'm like, I've never seen a book like this.
Oh,
That's just a
awesome.
very it's like very short. It just
Mhm.
explains to you what energy is. It helps you understand like how we're always picking up energy. Like, we don't hang out at it's like a literally example in my book. We don't hang out at garbage dumps because that energy is stale, gross, dead. Like,
Mhm.
we intuitively, even though if you're not an intuitive person, you just don't say to your friends, let's go hang out at the garbage dump, because that's
Right.
stale, dead energy.
Right.
You're not drawn to that.
Mhm.
Whereas, but we don't think about the interactions that we have with the people that we take on, like
Right.
someone at the red light who's angry at their mom beeps at you. That's an anger pass. Now all of a sudden you don't like to be beeped at, so you're angry that you got beeped at. That's an energy exchange, actually. It has
Mhm.
nothing to do with the
Mhm.
beeping. They were
Right.
angry. You got a little bit of the angry energy hit. Like, so
Mhm.
we're always doing these things. And I just wanted to
Yeah.
help explain it to
Mm.
people. So it's just very easy, explains it, gives you practical ways like cleansing baths, how to work with Palo Santo, how to work with sage, not in a woo woo way, just a very practical what it does way. Then there's intention. So setting your intention. I mean, the biggest way to cleanse your energy is gratitude. Like,
Mhm.
gratitude, being thankful. But then there are practical things you have to start to breathe. Like, you have to start to do somatics. You have to go to that space in your body and breathe into it and out from
Mhm.
it to give
Mhm.
it space. So that way it leaves. So that way
Yeah.
you can take up space in yourself. And then there's no longer any pain. And so
Mhm.
that is what I really think, because we're at a turning point, and I know you
Yeah.
feel it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the eclipse is coming. Like, the universe is literally turning the lights off and turning it back on in humanity. Like, it's just like, wake
Mhm.
up, everyone. So, what people are going to need to recognize is, how do I start? Where do I start? What do I do? Because,
Mhm.
when you first, I mean, we had traumatic events that
Yeah.
woke us up and no one was around.
Well,
We didn't
this is gonna be
know.
traumatic, right?
Yes, yeah, it is. Because, one, we're also seeing the decline in the death of humanity as we know it, as society as we know it. So that is traumatic, actually.
Yeah.
You're right. We're all seeing so much death and so much
Mhm.
destruction and so much just. to me, it's like pure insanity because we are such loving beings and we're pretending we're not. It's weird.
Right.
So, because once you get to your truth and you no longer let your pain body be in charge, your soul is in charge, your truth, your
Mm-hmm.
authenticity is. I do not want to hurt a fly. Like I see a
Yeah.
worm, I step over the worm.
Right. Right.
Before, I'm not going to lie. If I saw a spider, I'm killing it. Like before I started cleansing my energy, before I started
Right.
getting in tune, like
Right.
before I really started taking up space in my life, there'd be times where if someone hurt me, I wanted to hurt them back because
Mm-hmm.
that pain was a triggered in me.
Right.
I didn't
Right.
want it anymore. So I'm going to
Right.
give it back. So it's like hot potato. We're just playing hot
Mm-hmm.
potato with feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like really, if I could help, just where do you need to start? You need to start cleansing your energy. You
Yeah.
need to start to understand that a lot of what you're doing is coming from a place of pain. There's no one on this
Mhm.
planet that has not been traumatized at this point in our world and in our life somehow, some way. Even if you had the
Right.
most loving parents, someone at school did something to you, I guarantee it. Someone
Mm-hmm.
at a babysitter said something to you, somewhere, you
Mm-hmm.
have this pain. Even the earth herself has this pain. Just walking
Mm-hmm.
on, just being
Oh
on the
yeah.
planet right now, we're
Yeah.
feeling it. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're being asked to cleanse. That's what this eclipse is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big cleanse. Where like more, there's more flooding, there's more fires. Like cleansing happens through fire, cleansing happens through water, cleansing happens through the elements.
Mm-hmm.
So Mother Earth herself is wakening and
Yeah, she
cleansing and
is.
moving around.
Yeah.
So are we.
Yep.
And that's where I'll leave it. Because I feel like I don't know
Oh
how
my
long I've been
gosh.
talking.
But it's been pretty consistent for an hour.
Okay, I thought so.
So, because clearly we're going to have more conversations.
Yeah,
But I want
we
to
could talk forever. Because now that I
clearly,
tapped into you, I'm like,
oh yeah, we're yeah, we'll figure that out later. But for now, what I'm going to ask you is how do people find you?
yeah. So you can find me at www.innerelementwellness.com. That's going to have like the best way. That's where my services are. I have a link to my podcast on there. I have my book on there. I also created a companion journal that goes, it's
Awesome.
called the Cleanse Your Energy Journal, and it takes you through a 21-day journey. So you don't have to think about it. All of the information is
Awesome.
right there, guides you. It will help you to actually go back and look at your energy and your trauma and your childhood in a very supportive way.
Mm,
So you won't even realize that you're looking at it. I kind of created it that way. And I
cool.
actually did the journal myself just because I wanted to see, because I
Yeah.
didn't want to like tell people to do it and then not
Right, right.
know. It really helps because I give you a release page, and this is what I found the
Oh,
most of.
cool.
So every day you have a safe space to release, which we
Mm,
so need. Even as kids, we would always couldn't wait to see our mom and our dad to tell them about our day. Like
right.
we lose that as adults, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's good or bad, and especially the bad parts of our day. We need someone to talk to about. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's a release page. You get to just let it all out. So there's that on there. And then I have ways in which you can work with me. And so that's probably the best place. And then I'm obviously like on Instagram. And my book is only available on Amazon.
Awesome. Sydney, I am so grateful for connecting with you, for having this amazing conversation, and for just knowing you're on the planet with me at this time in consciousness. I am so, so grateful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And honestly, thank you too. Because like I said before we started recording, the recent podcast episode that I listened to of yours was life-changing. And I'm genuinely just very grateful to know that you're out there too.
Thank you.
Because I don't get a lot of interactions with a lot of people that get me, who lost their dad, who gets the thing, who's been on the
Yeah.
journey. So keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing.
Thank you, my dear. So much love to you.
You too.